Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining us today for the 1004 show. It's me again, Zach Miller. I'll be your host, just like I have the other 68 episodes. But here we are, episode 69, with the CEO of Array Digital, Erik Olson. You guys can learn about them at thisisarray.com. I have known Erik for quite some time now, maybe 5 or 6 years. And we have a conversation today about a lot of the things that he's done since I've known him. He's started a couple businesses. He's closed a business. He's broken ties with partners, created new businesses with new partners, merged with the business, invested in businesses, and been an all-around great guy. So we're going to deep dive into what happens when you merge with another business. What are the technicalities? What are the technical pieces that are actually necessary when buying a new domain? And maybe some of the biggest missteps that businesses have when they're trying to get their name out. It's episode 69 of the 1004 show with Erik Olson of Array Digital. Let's get into it. Do you want to flex your muscles before?
You're funny, man.
I'm glad I recorded that.
Yeah, that was great. Was that the intro? That was it?
That's funny is I might actually do it.
Yeah.
Erik Olson, what's going on, man?
Hey, Zach. How's it going?
Wonderful. How important is a domain name in a business?
Good question. It's important because it establishes your brand, but nowadays it's really difficult to get a .com, and especially the .com that you want. So a lot of times, if you want a .com, which is recommended because it's the most widely known type of a domain, you can't get something that's perfect for you, and you have to go with an alternate. So some sort of derivative of your name. So as an example, we're Array Digital, but arraydigital.com was taken, and so we had to go with something else, and we went with thisisarray.com.
So before, in a previous world, you had a different business as well, which merged into Array, which we'll talk about in a minute, but you started a company that was, I believe, Fresh IMS.
Yep.
Got that domain, and then 2 or 3 other times actually changed that domain over and over again. Like, does that hurt a brand at that point? Like, how do you constantly communicate with people? Like, I was Fresh IMS. I'm erikolson.com. I'm arraydigital.com or whatever it might be. This is array.com. Like, how do you make sure that the people that you're, wanting to get in business know who they're communicating with? Because it seems like it's the constant change can be, an incomplete piece to your marketing.
It can be. All right. So that's a great point. So, yeah, we were Fresh IMS, which was really Fresh Information Management Systems.
Yep.
And I came from a Navy contracting background. I had done 9 years of Navy contracting before that. And every product that the Navy used was something information management systems. And so with that experience, I thought that information management systems and using that as part of like a product or service name was widely known. So I went ahead and I got Fresh IMS. And then when I went into the commercial world, no one knew what an IMS was. Right? So IMS being information management system. And so I used that name for about, I don't know, it wasn't that long, maybe like 3, possibly 6 months. And I realized that I had to change it. And so I started to think about other names, and I changed it to 80/20. I wanted something that was abstract, short, and that was business related. So there's the 80/20 rule that gets thrown around a lot, 80% solutions, things like that. And I thought it was perfect. And so I went ahead and rebranded. At the time, it was a good decision because I was only about 3 months into it. So no one knew who Fresh IMS was. People knew who Erik Olson was, and they knew that Erik Olson had a business, but they didn't care what the business was called. And I hadn't put enough effort into branding that first name to make switching to a second name a big deal. Now, fast forward.
Yeah.
about 3 years, 3.5 years, and 80/20 ended up merging with another company called IDWeb Studios in Virginia Beach. When we merged, um, me and the other founder of the current company, Array Digital, did not, neither one of us liked our company names at the time. And we felt that we were creating a new company that had nothing really substantial to do with the old company. We were taking the services and the products from the previous two companies, merging them together and coming up with something new. And so we both wanted to rebrand and we both wanted a new name, and that was an opportunity. Now, each time we change these names, it is a big deal. We have to change domains, we have to change logos, we have to change, just basically everything. Um, if you're early in your company's history, like I was when I switched from Fresh IMS to 80/20, that's the time to do it. But once you've been in business for a while, people start to know you where you don't know them. So they know you beyond your influence, beyond your first degree connections. So once you get to that point, you have to think long and hard about changing that name.
Interesting. So when you have to deal with that domain, what do you do with the historical link side of it? So if it was freshims.com/blog whatever information, do you then forward that all information to different people? Does it still live on the old site? Like, what's the best practice from all the...
Sure. So, at an absolute minimum, the domain and everything after it, you want to forward to the new domain. No doubt about that. Ideally, though, you'll do exactly what you just suggested, Zach, which is you take everything after that first slash and you will go to that path in the new domain. Right? So if someone went to 8020.co is what we actually had, /blog, then you want to redirect them to thisisarray.com/blog.
We're talking to Erik Olson, Array Digital. This is array.com, episode 69 on 1004th show. Let's talk backstory. So back 4 or 5 years ago, you were in a different business. You love changing things up, it seems like. So you were in a different business. You had been working in the government contracting world as a business owner with a partner, and the writing was on the wall. Somehow you figured out that a contract wasn't going to renew. And then you started to get into ultimately what is the business that you're in today. How did you start kind of putting out feelers for people understanding that, hey, I'm not going to be in this world, I'm getting into the commercial world? Like, how did you let people know that, hi, I'm Erik Olson and I'm open for business?
Yep. So, I was doing Navy contracting. I had done it for 9 years. I was really ready to move on to something else. And I had a good idea that the big program that we worked under was going to be awarded to another team that we weren't a part of. And that's exactly what happened. So about 6 months beforehand, I started to prepare by going online, and I found jobs that people needed done. So it was just your typical internet freelancing. I went to Elance, which is now part of Upwork, I believe is what they're called. And I got a couple of projects, and I got them pretty quickly, actually. Now, the pay was not that great, but I started to get some money coming in, and I started to get a couple of referrals from those first jobs. But what was happening, I discovered, was that I had like two personas. One was my day job, and then the other one was my freelancing night job. And those two worlds I did not want to collide at all. And so I really couldn't go to anyone in my day job persona to try to get work. So anyone that knew me in that context was basically off limits from the freelancer context, because I didn't want those two worlds to collide, and who knows what could happen. So I wasn't able to go to a lot of the people that I knew to try to get work. I had to go to people that I didn't know. Now, fast forward a couple of months, the contract was awarded to another group. We were out, and I decided to go full-time freelancing. And at that point, I made a commitment not only to myself, but to everyone else, that I was going to do it full-time. And I did that by actually printing up an announcement, and I mailed it to every single person that I knew that I had an address for. And so with that, I kind of came out of the closet, so to speak, for freelancing. And I just let everyone know, this is what I'm doing. This is my plan. This is what I offer. And, just trying to drum up some business, but basically get the word out to my first degree network that I was doing this.
And what happened?
And it worked. I got a couple of jobs, and it started me down the path that I'm on right now. So one of the mistakes that I see a lot of people do when they freelance is they keep it to themselves, right? Or they start a company, or they start a service, or they start a product, and they just kind of keep it to themselves. Like it's almost like they're not confident enough to tell the world what they're doing. So I figured if I'm not confident enough to tell the world what I'm doing, then I shouldn't be doing this. So I was fully committed. I made the announcement. Everybody knew all the personas that I had. The Navy contracting persona, and I had a couple of others that were floating out, from other projects that I'd done. I consolidated them all down into fresh IMS.
So when you do that, your past basically becomes your future, because your past you just say, hey, I'm done with that, because you're saying this is who I am now, and then you don't have to worry about that anymore. Was kind of the idea.
Yeah, that's exactly the idea. So like if you go to LinkedIn, you'll see that people have 4 or 5 present jobs. And it's because, they started a side business, they started a product, they started a website, something or other. And they've got all these things that you can tell when there's a lot of these things in someone's LinkedIn profile in particular, that they've tried a lot of things and nothing's really caught on. Or at least the thing that they want to catch on has not really caught on. And so what I wanted to do is I didn't want any of that confusion. I didn't want to list, 3 or 4 different personas or products. I just wanted to get rid of all that stuff and say, this is what I'm doing now. So if you know me, Erik Olson, think fresh IMS.
Smart. Makes sense. So fresh IMS, at some point you realize IMS people didn't get. I need to change to be something different. 80-20 is what you decided to do. 80-20, ultimately you decided to merge with a different business. We'll talk about that. Now, so you were growing your business. It was going pretty well. This is still 80-20 at this point. Yep. So it's growing. You get to how many employees at that point? Or that's height?
Well, first employee was about a year into it.
Okay. And then you got to about how many?
Up to the merger, about 7. We have 7 people.
Okay. So including yourself, you have 7 people at the merger. So how do you decide that merging is the thing that I want to do?
Yeah. Well, you typically do it because you're missing something. So in our particular instance, we were programmers. So we can make a web application in particular work great. A lot of data in, a lot of data out, very tight. But it would look not that great. We couldn't do other things. If someone came to us for just a marketing website, we had to pass on it because we're programmers. We don't build marketing websites. If someone wanted anything that looked cool, we couldn't do it.
So the back end, the actual technical side of it looked very solid, or it worked from a solid perspective, but from a front end user perspective, it did not flow well, so that people couldn't use it. Is what you're ultimately saying?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Now it worked. The workflow was fine, but it just didn't look appealing. It was just basic, like a white screen with a bunch of text boxes and drop downs and things like that. So very, very functional, very functional. So I knew that we were missing that, and I knew that we needed it, and I wasn't so sure that I could grow it because that's not my background, right? So I was a programmer by trade, so anything programming related, I feel very confident about. Anything design related, I don't really know it. So I knew that we were missing something. We did well, but I knew that we could only take it so far as only programmers, and I wanted to do more than just program. I wanted to provide products. Now on the flip side, the other aspect of the merger was IDWeb Studios and Kevin Daisy. I'll speak for him because obviously he's not here, but on his side, they did not have programmers. They had web designers. So they built marketing websites. So they could make things that looked really, really nice. But if there wasn't a plugin for it, then they're stuck, right? And anytime that he got a job opportunity that required a little bit more than a plugin, he had to hand it off to someone like me. And so he was missing out on that revenue. And then he also couldn't take his company really much farther as far as doing other kinds of work besides just content management systems. So he wanted to do more. I wanted to do more. And when we sat down and we talked about it, we did a couple of projects together, and just kind of came up in conversation. Hey, you've got what I need, and I've got what you need, and we should merge. And after a lot of conversations, we realized that if we did, it would actually be kind of like, fitting this skill set into this gap.
I mean, you make it seem very pleasant. How many? So you guys have been working together. So different skill sets.
Yep.
And one side starts basically giving deals to the other side, and vice versa, because you're giving leads basically to someone because you can't fulfill it yourself. You start realizing that, hey, maybe we can work on this together. There's a project in Austin that I think really helped this flow there. But how were you guys drinking when you talked about merging? How did this actual merge conversation really come up? And who did it first?
We did work on a project together, and so the team got a chance to work with one another, and a couple of individuals on both sides just liked working with the other individual. There was actually some synergies going on there. Basically, they got along, and they liked having the support of that other skill set that was missing. So that was kind of like the first clue. And then we had a couple of opportunities that came to us. One of them was really big, actually. Even today would have been our biggest project, but it's an opportunity that came to IDWeb Studios, and they could not fulfill it because it required some API work. And so we went and we talked to this prospect together. So the two of us, as representing two different companies, basically as a partnership at that point, an informal partnership, went and talked to this customer. And I think I was probably the first one to mention, hey, if we join forces, we do well. And not really knowing what to expect, and the result, or the feedback that I got, was positive. So we go in to talk to this prospect, and it was just awkward because we were two different companies talking about joining forces to do one project. That client, if they would have done it, would have had a contract with us and with them. And they would have had to have managed two different sets of invoices, and it's double the work. And so we realized going in that we could absolutely do it, but we were at a disadvantage because we were both small compared to the sum of the two of us. And then also we came with twice the overhead. Now, we went into that meeting saying, if we win this, that's a sign we have to merge. What happened was we lost it. We did not get the project. And we got a debrief, and one of the reasons why was because of the double overhead. And they found another shop, that could do everything. And so when we got that feedback, we had a talk, and we said, you know what? Because of this negative feedback, we have to merge. This is going to continue to happen to us. We are going to lose these projects that we want and lose these opportunities that we want until we form an actual company.
You owned 100% of 80/20?
Yep.
He owned 100% of IDWeb?
Yep.
Now you don't. You decide to merge. Where did that come into the thought process? Because I own 100% of Hatch. I've been offered, not from a merging perspective, but I've been offered cash before for a stake in the business, and I'm not interested in that. And so what went through your mind kind of through that process, where I'm my own boss, now there's two of us, we both have wives, all of this stuff now has to, be thought about.
It's certainly a big change, right? So I'm sure everyone who's going to listen to this has heard the phrase, do you want to own 100% of a small pie, or a small slice of a big pie, right? So there's that concept, and whether it works out or not is a different story. But there were a lot of positives that came with it. We felt that we could get bigger together than get bigger as separate. And then we had a better chance of not only surviving, but thriving. And so the pie was going to get bigger if we joined forces, if we joined teams, and if we reduced overhead. Now, granted, I had 100% flexibility. I could do whatever I want, whenever I wanted. I could, I could buy a new phone and not have to ask anybody, and it was a business expense. And now I've got to kind of run it by someone, right? So there was a change, but we were both coming from the same kind of background. I think it would be harder if you joined forces or partner with someone that had a completely different stake in the business than you do. So, like you were saying, you were offered cash, I guess, from an investor. In that
Right.
particular situation, it'd probably be potentially different because you're both you have different reasons for doing it, right? You have different reasons for that partnership. For you want to get ahead, but for the investor, maybe they just want to make money. That's it, right? They don't care about the good things that you're doing. So at least for us, we're in this together. It's actually reassuring to have someone else you can talk to and that you can bounce ideas off of and kind of avoid some of these pitfalls that you find yourself in. When you have a partner, you can talk to them.
So you guys merge beginning of this year. Y'all still friends?
No, hate the guy. No, of course. No, yeah, good friends.
How do you guys? What are some of the challenges that maybe you guys went through? Not necessarily individually, but with the business. And how do you guys kind of resolve that specifically through the merge?
Sure. So we there was a difference in culture for sure between the way that that company operated and the way that I operated my company. And so
It's because you were more like the principal.
I am the principal. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a little more adamant on processes and documentation and clarity. Kevin is much more of like a people person, if you will, and so he likes to talk through things, whereas I like to actually get into the analytics. So we have different personalities, which can clash sometimes, but also there's a lot of benefits there. It's nice if I can't make a call or an event or a meeting, a lot of times he can. Or just yesterday, as a matter of fact, he had a prospect that he was talking to, and the guy wanted to talk to him like right away, but he was away for like 2 hours in a meeting, and I got the email and I called the person, and so we can bounce things off of one another very quickly. We can tag team things, but there were certainly differences in style and the approach, and it just led to a lot of talking, frankly, a lot of talking and figuring out how we were going to do this going forward. I mean, really, the first 3 months after the merger, we didn't leave this office because it took that long to figure out what we had just done.
Agency life is basically getting project to project, and you don't know what the next one is. It's hard to fill the pipeline. What's your thought on building an internal product that people can, that you can have a better understanding of where cash flow is or isn't, so that you're not waiting on that next product or project to come, if you will?
Yeah. I've tried it a couple of times. It's not cheap because you're paying someone to do it, and usually you're paying them, kind of top dollar because you hire a developer to work on a project. You know how much that project's going to bring in or what the hourly rate is, and so you usually hire them knowing these kinds of fees that you expect for their work in the future. So when you hire them, you're getting essentially reimbursed and then some for that expense. But when you pull them off of a project and you do an internal project, it's just straight up cost. It's just straight up overhead. Now, you can kind of lose track of that, right? So like it doesn't really jump out at you because you're not writing a specific check for this particular product. It's money you expected to pay anyways for wages, but it can be very unproductive. So you really need to know what you're going to do very, very well before you go into it. So we've tried it a couple of times. We spent about a year working on a product where it was like a website creator, where we were creating an internal tool for ourselves to build marketing websites. And the idea was once we create this tool, very, very quickly, we can spit out a marketing website that was just amazing. All we have to do is put in images and text, and the engine will just render it at real time. We spent a year working on it. Probably put in 2,500 hours. If you multiply that times an hourly rate, especially a billing rate, it becomes very expensive. It's a lot of money to sink into something. And in the end, it didn't help us build marketing websites, and I didn't want to launch a product off of that, so we killed it.
Why didn't it work?
It was just it was a pain in the ass to use, frankly. So every single time that we built a couple websites using it, but every single time there was a problem. So every single time that I sat down to use it, there was something else that had to be done. It just wasn't done yet. It never got done. It never got easier. It was easier just to spin up like a WordPress site. So we were trying to solve a problem that didn't really need solving.
Did the merge with IDWeb kind of help you recognize that? Or were they, if you would have had them around, would you have that same feeling? Or was it because you couldn't, that piece that was missing of the pie was them?
Right.
And you
That's
were,
exactly what it
okay.
was. Yeah. So we built this starting as 80/20 because we were missing the ability to create marketing websites. So we wanted to build a programming platform that created marketing websites. We're programmers. We can figure this out. So from a technical standpoint, no problem. And it actually worked from a technical standpoint, but from actually doing it, like clicking the buttons and just, it was just a horrible user experience. It is not what we wanted. It didn't fulfill the vision. And if we would have had the IDWeb team in place at the time, we would have never started down that path.
It's interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about it like that?
Well, you're right, because we were missing something. And so we went about it the hard way, really. Right?
Yeah.
So instead of hiring, say, like a WordPress developer to come work for us, or even like a freelancer, we went about it the hard way. So we decided we're going to build our own product. It's going to be great. We're going to make a lot of money. We didn't make any money. We never even tried to make money off of it because it didn't work for us. So yeah, we went about it the hard way, and then we learned from it. And hopefully what we're doing now is not the hard way.
Recently, I've been deep diving into Erik Olson, learning about you and the process that you're kind of developing for yourself and the brand that you're building around that, and Array Digital. You're producing a lot of content, not just from you personally, but also from the business, for the business. That's a big risk too. What's kind of the story behind that?
So I don't know if it's a big risk, but it's certainly a big time sink. So the idea is I've always had a difficult time getting past my first degree connections. So all of the work that I've gotten in the past has been because I've known people and then they've introduced me to someone else, and it's all referral business, which is great. That's the best kind of business, but you can only get so much of that. So what I wanted to do is get beyond that. And so the idea was let's build up our SEO. So let's get serious about SEO. So instead of just dropping a couple of keywords on your homepage, we did a lot of learning, did a lot of experimenting. And these days, when it comes to search engine optimization, it's all about content, number one, first and foremost, and then social media. And the social media really just validates the content that you put out in Google's eyes. So yeah, we started writing. I started writing a lot. Now, it can be time consuming. You have to set aside a couple of hours, and you have to be persistent about it, and certainly determined. Otherwise, you'll just keep saying to yourself, yeah, I'm going to write that article one day. So yeah, you got to write it, put it on your website. And then the risky part, I guess, is really just kind of coming out and making your statement. This is my belief. This is what we're doing.
I said risk because it was another big project. It was another project that had a lot of unknowns. You had done that with the Build a Company website piece before, and now you're going to spend, I don't know if it's 2,500 hours, but it's a lot of hours to put something out there that's unknown. So in a previous episode, we talked to Todd Kletz of 1 Hour Heating and Cooling, and he did an advertising campaign with Bandit. I don't know if you've ever seen this. You'll see it now that you hear me say it. But they were working with a group in Austin, and they said, you got to give it a year.
Yeah.
How long do you have to give? So that's a pay-per-play, a radio ad and stuff like that. How long do you have to wait until this SEO or this content game actually starts giving you cash from it?
You'll see a bump pretty quickly, but you won't see the end results that you want until a little bit later.
So hold on. So a bump as in your traffic will go up, but you won't see cash yet?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So right away, when we started to look at SEO for Array Digital, so we built a website, we put it out there, and it was very quick because we had just merged and we needed something. And then we started to look at the SEO value of that, and we realized we've got a bunch of holes here, right? We gotta restructure this, and we've got to come up with the keywords. And once we did that, we started to see that we were rising through the ranks. So every single week we sit down and we look at our digital marketing report, not only for all of our clients, but for ourselves. And we constantly analyze what's going on, and almost on a daily basis, we're making tweaks. But what we saw is that we went from no traffic to probably about 1,000 page views a week at this point. Sometimes it spikes as high as 3,000, depending on what we do. But we saw a boost in page views, but we weren't getting a whole lot of contact us forms submitted. We saw that we were on the first page of Google, but we weren't seeing a lot of people clicking through. So this has been an evolution for us. The first thing was rise in the ranks of Google, because if you're not on the first page, it doesn't matter.
What tool are you using to track this?
We've got a couple different tools that we use. There's one that I found recently. It's called rankhacker.com. That one's pretty interesting. It'll compare you to others in your industry and show your rank, and then also the click-through rate of you and your competitors. Competitors being other web pages like the one that you gave it.
From a specific Google search?
Yes, yeah, it's all Google based. Yeah.
Okay. So the click-through rate is from you type in a series of keywords.
That's right.
Okay.
So if you were to Google for hatch, right? Hatch is going to come up. Probably some other things will come up, and you'll be able to see the click-through rate for all of those links that come up on the first page, which is pretty slick. So, anyways, for us, it was step number one: get on the first page of Google. If you're not on the first page of Google, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters, right? So you've got to get the rankings. The second thing was once you're on the first page of Google, what does it actually look like? What is the title of the page? Which page are you trying to get on the first page of Google? Is it your home page, or is it some sort of a services or product page? That's also very, very important. Google and other search engines, all they care about are individual web pages, much more so than domain names. And so you need to think about what keyword are you targeting on each and every single page that you're trying to get into Google. And so that's all about rising to the ranks. Once you rise to the ranks and someone starts clicking through, what do they see? Right? So if it's a horrible web page, if it's the user experience is bad, you got to fix that. The next thing we looked at was the click-through rate. So with the click-through rate, it's great if you're on the first page of Google, but why do you want to be on the first page of Google? So that someone clicks. If they're not clicking, that's a problem. What's the point of getting on the first page if no one clicks through, right? So you got to get on the first page. You've got to have a click-through rate. You've got to have something compelling for them to land on. And then once they're on your web page, you have to get them to contact you for some reason or another. All right, so you have to make it very easy for them to contact you. The contact form should be very obvious. The phone number should be very obvious. You should make it very, very easy for them to either contact you or continue with their research. And I say research because they're probably going to your site to figure out what you do and how you can help them.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Your process before, is this something that you guys worked on together to improve this, so this specific piece with the content, or is this something that's new for you guys?
This is relatively new. Each of us had done it before, but we knew that we could do it better. And so once we came together, and especially once we hired our digital marketing manager, that's when we did a lot of research, a lot of experimenting on our own website, and we're tracking everything. It's all about analytics.
What's the number one metric that you track in your business?
In the business itself?
Yeah.
The number one metric is probably, certainly it's revenue and income, right? So profit.
How's your experience with everything that you've done led to you becoming a better business owner today?
It's a series of learning experiences. Every single thing that we do here, we try to learn from. No one's perfect. No company's perfect. What you want to do is you want to minimize the errors. You want to go out and study what other people are doing, and you want to get better. So every day you want to get better. It if you literally say, I'm fine being the way that I and my company are now, and even if we're the same as a year ago, you're not getting any better. Everyone else is getting better around you. Certainly, your competitors that are surviving and thriving are getting better. You have to continue to get better, right? This is a long journey that we're all on, and you can't just be apathetic and say we're done. We're just going to coast at this point. The moment you start coasting is when you start coasting downhill, typically. So it's been a big learning experience. I feel like we're getting better. I feel like we're learning. I feel like opportunities are coming to us. It's been 10 months since the merger. I think all of that's kind of history at this point. And we're starting to see things like SEO pick up. We're starting to see referrals pick up. So everything that we had hoped was going to happen has been happening.
You touched on a little bit about competitors. Do you care about your competitors? Does that worry you about do things worry you about competitors? Are you constantly looking at them saying, this is what they're doing, this is what we need to be doing? Like, what are your thoughts on how much time and effort you should put into someone that might be similar to you?
I think, we certainly know who our competitors are. There's no question about who they are or what they do. We look at it more from an aspect of what can we learn here, right? So we have a couple competitors in our local market and a couple competitors in the regional market. But most of them are a little bit different than us for one reason or another. Now, is it enough of a difference where we can explain to a prospect why we're better than another company that does something very, very similar? That's what we're trying to find. How are we different? And are we different? Are we different in a positive way? And if so, how do we explain that? And it's not just a matter of how do we spin it, but what do we really feel is a value added by going with us versus someone else? So yeah, absolutely, we know who our competitors are. We know what they're doing. We go to their websites. We know them personally. We talk to them. We share information. I wish the best for my competitors, but I'm also competitive. I want to win. Doesn't mean that winning means destroying someone else. But we want to get as much of that pie as possible. And so we're always looking to see what someone else is doing and evaluating if it's a good thing that may change our strategy.
According to my LinkedIn, I am the best interviewer in the world. How am I doing?
Well, I think there was a caveat to that. Was it the world or was it just a subsection?
I'm looking at it right now. It says best interviewer in the world. Should it just be 1%? Part of the 1%?
Wait. But did you write that or?
No, I wrote it.
You wrote it.
Self-proclaimed.
You are a damn good interviewer.
So here, look, is it a little ridiculous? Absolutely. But to me, marketing is about just getting someone to look at you, positive or negative, give you some sort of reaction. And if someone reads that and goes, no, he's not, I'm getting the reaction that I want. Or if they're sitting there going, maybe he is, that's also the reaction that I want. Marketing, if there's multiple steps to marketing, that first thing is getting someone to look up and be there, right? I don't know if you've ever read the book, Think and Grow Rich, but one thing in the book, so it's one of the top 5 business books. If you ever talk to anyone, all these lists, like best business books, Think and Grow Rich is one of them. And a lot of good pieces to the book, but there's one thing that I think is really important, and it says, you have to know what you want to be. Right. And so if you want to make $1 million, $10 million, if you want to, whatever that metric is that you want to be, you have to wake up every morning and multiple times a day tell yourself that you are that or you're becoming that. Because if you don't think that you can be that, you never will. Right. If you don't think that you can be the greatest agency owner in the world, you definitely never will. If you don't think that you're going to be the best interviewer in the world, if you don't think that you're going to be the best entrepreneur in the world, you won't. And so maybe it's a little misleading. But you know what? I didn't start thinking about this until other people kept going, damn, that's a really good question. Oh, you made me think about things that I hadn't been thinking about. And I was like, maybe I should start marketing that. And so it's just interesting. So I had to put myself into this, whole situation because I got myself into it. But, what do you think you can do? And start telling the world that maybe you are that.
Well, we all suffer from imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
What's that?
So we get into doing something and then we feel inadequate, right? So let's say as an interviewer, when you first started doing this show or you started doing the TV show or, you've done a lot of interviewing. But when you first started, you probably thought, you know what, I'm putting on a big game here and I'm smiling and everyone sees that, Zach's doing this, but you probably didn't have the self-confidence, right? And it takes a while to get the self-confidence. So that's imposter syndrome. It's in every industry. It's in every profession. You just feel like you don't belong, right? So like you're pretending. But at some point, you get the experience and you get over that. But it's very difficult to get over the imposter syndrome. And so by making a statement like I'm the best interviewer in the world, it's kind of like coming out, like I said before, right? So I came out with the business name and what I was doing. You're coming out and saying, I'm really interested in this thing, and I actually think I'm pretty good. And you're establishing self-confidence, and you have to do that if you want to continue to get better, right? Otherwise, if you don't say that you're the world's best interviewer, what are you? I'm just a guy,
Yeah,
I'm just a guy.
Here I am.
It's Skype. Yeah, and some people are going to say that, but the thing is, you're doing it, right? So it's very easy to come at anyone who's doing anything and say, you're an idiot. That person doesn't know what they're doing. It's very, very hard to actually just get out and do it.
What's interesting is, and as I do these and I have more conversations with people, there's a couple of things that I look back and really reflect on. And I'm not a big reflection guy, if you will. But there's two things that in the last maybe 3 months I've really thought about that I think are important. Number one, when I started doing these videos in 2011, 2012, 2013, I wasn't planning on doing a podcast like this. I wasn't expecting to have my own TV show on ABC. But those things damn well helped me a lot. And now I look back at them and I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about this as being this next thing. But then also the amount of research that's really necessary to put everything together. I'm sure you do this too, where you're talking about your competitors, you're talking about constantly tweaking the websites. Like, all those things are really important. And it's getting that nugget and then doing something with it. So when you learn something, a new technique, when you hear something that you might be able to implement, how do you then actually decide, let's do it?
Yeah. You have to take in a lot of information, right? So it is very time consuming to go out and read these blog posts, and everyone gets these kinds of emails where there's some research that's done that suggests something or other. So you have to take your own experience, what you're going through with your company, and then this outside knowledge that you gain either by talking to someone or reading an article or something like that, and just try to find the common thread. Now, a lot of times it helps when you bounce that off of someone as well, right? So again, having a business partner is nice because I can say, hey, the client mentioned this. I read this thing from this Google article, and then also the best interview in the world, Zach, he dropped this one other nugget, and I think based on all that information, it may be a good idea to do this course of action. What do you think? Right. So you kind of like make a case for it.
Yeah. So I was the cherry on top.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if I didn't hear from you, then I probably would still be thinking about it. But now I'm doing it.
What do you think about mentorship? Do you? I mean, is this kind of the same thing where like you're doing this research and mentorship is not just the one-on-one where it used to be, where that there's more people that you can get information from, or do you think that kind of that research and mentorship are two totally different things, or your traditional mentorship?
Yeah, are you talking about like me being a mentor or getting a mentor?
No, so like the scenario that you just talked about, where you're getting information from someone, is that mentorship, right? In the same sense, right? And then do you still then have someone that you have conversations with that you want to become?
Gotcha. So I don't have like an official mentor.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we ever have an official mentor. We realize who those mentors are years later.
Right. You're absolutely right. And so there's people in your life now, whether it's personal or professional, that you look up to, right? That you say, that person's ahead of me in this ride, right? So And I like what they've done for themselves, and I want to kind of mimic myself from their experience. And so it's good when you find someone like that to establish a relationship and get to the point where you can actually tell them some of this information that you may not share widely with other people, and find out how they've handled a situation like that in the past. So I don't think any of us really want to be told what to do, right? So I don't want anyone to come into my office to say, based on what you've told me, Eric, here's your strategy. This is what you need to think, right? No one wants to be told what to think or what to do, but what they want is some experience, right? So if I say, hey, these three pieces of information have come together, and I think maybe this is the right strategy that I want to take, I want to hear from others, mentors, if they've done something like that, if it worked out. I think there's going to be all this positive if I do this one thing. Have you done that? Was it positive? Was it kind of positive, or was it negative?
Yeah, one conversation that I like to bring up a lot is Nick Friedman of College Hunks Moving Junk. College Hunks.
It's a mouthful.
Nick,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Right.
Nick, I'm sorry I
College
butchered it.
Hunks
College
Moving
Hunks is what
Junk.
we'll just call it. Moving and hauling junk. He says there's opinion and there's wisdom. Opinion are like the people who watch Shark Tank, or your parents are like, this is what I think you should do. And there's wisdom, people who have actually done it. And I think that's missing in the business world a lot, where people who can actually give you real stories as to how they went through a process is so much more valuable than someone who says, well, this is how you should raise money because this is what I saw through doing it. And I think that's important. What's the riskiest thing that you've done in the last year?
Definitely the merger, no doubt about it. It was a huge risk. It's basically, it's like getting married. And if it doesn't work out, you have to get a divorce. And so going into it, I knew that if it didn't work out, I'd probably be fine, but I'd have to go through a rebranding again, right? Would I go back to 80/20, or would I be something else, or would I just, go get a job? Who knows, right? So it's a big risk. If we didn't get along, it would be a huge problem. So that was a big risk.
Getting a job. You've been your own boss for a long time. Is that the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah, definitely. I have not borrowed money to do this. I haven't leveraged the house, right? The 401k is not on the line. The worst that can happen really is that, and by the way, I'll never do that, right? It's just, I know people say you got to go all in, and I think that's too risky. So, the worst that'll happen here is we go to zero in our bank account, and there's no more money coming in, and we don't borrow any money, and that's it. It's over. Now, I don't foresee that happening, and I don't want it to happen. But yeah, worst case scenario for doing your own thing is you get a job. All right. So now let's say that it didn't work out for me. Didn't work out for any of us. Certainly the employees would have no problem getting a job because they're going from one company to another. The founders have a little more difficult time because they've been effectively executives, and really the best kind of position for them is to be an executive at another company, and those are few and far between, right? So you may need to lower your standard a little bit. So instead of being the CEO of a new company, maybe you're a vice president, or maybe you're a director, right? So it's going to be a little bit of an ego blow, but the worst case is you go get a steady paycheck, right? I mean, that's not that bad. Not that bad at all.
You mentioned people talk about going all in, risking everything, putting the 401k, the house on the line, maxing the credit cards. Is that depend business to business? Meaning you run an agency where you get business, they pay you. Is it different when you don't have a business like that, where you have a business where you have to sell product, or
like
you're trying, or a big business or something like that? Like, well, your wife has had a bakery, right? Did you guys go into risk in that scenario?
So we had to put a lot of money on the line, yeah, in order to open a bakery or any kind of retail.
So this is new thoughts. This is new wisdom because you've gone through a negative experience where you've done that in the past.
That's right. Yeah. So we opened a bakery. We had to buy refrigerators, freezers, ovens. We had to build out a space. It was expensive. Now, that was our own money. We didn't actually borrow that. So we put our own money in, and then we opened the doors and we hoped for the best. Right now, we did marketing and we did all the things they would expect us to do, but we were opening the doors and hoping that people would walk through. And in order to get to that point, you have to put money into it in a business like that. Another example is I have a really good friend who runs a limo company. And in order to get into business, he had to go buy a $30,000 limousine. He cannot run his business without buying a $30,000 limousine. You don't have that, there is no business. For us, it's different. It's labor, basically, right? And certainly starting off, I didn't have to necessarily pay myself. I just had to do it. So the upfront expense was very, very minimal. Basically, it's a laptop, which I already had. Right? So now for us, operating it requires a lot of expense because we have people. Right? So if we don't have people that get paid every 2 weeks, then we don't have a business. For the limo business, he had to make a one-time purchase, and then he's just making payments on it, very small payments on the loan. So he borrowed money and he's making payments, whereas for us, we didn't borrow any money. We're just effectively making payments all the time.
What's an experience that you went through with someone that it didn't work out?
There's been a couple of early clients in particular where there was a miscommunication, a misunderstanding, or where I did not take the effort to really understand their position. And I made some assumptions, and those assumptions were not correct, and the relationship deteriorated. In the beginning of Fresh IMS, I think before I even did 80/20, there was one client in particular where there was just a miscommunication, and the client was a little difficult to work with and communicate with, and I didn't handle it very well, and I basically just dismissed the client. And I don't really do that. I would never do that again today. I would certainly get with the client and kind of express my opinion on something, if I need to, how I feel about it, and how I perceive their communications back to me, and try to get to like a common ground versus just dismissing someone.
I want to ask you a series of questions that we can learn a little bit more about you. We're talking with Erik Olson of Array Digital. You guys can learn about them at thisisarray.com, episode 69 of the 1004 show. Erik, what did you cry about or at last?
What did I cry about last? Oh, I know what it was. My best friend's wedding. So I was the best man, and we were standing there waiting for the bride to walk down the aisle, and we were facing the other way, and we turned to look at her, and the music was playing, and the groom, my friend, he started to cry. He got all choked up, and it got me choked up too.
It's amazing how one person cries and other people cry too. How long ago was that?
That was 2 months ago.
Okay. You were at my wedding and you didn't cry. And that was only 1 month ago.
Yeah, I did, but it was later at night. You didn't see it. Yeah. It was a little embarrassing.
You're a terrible liar. What's a pet peeve of yours?
Pet peeve of mine is where people puff themselves up to be a lot more than they actually are. And what I mean by that is everyone kind of puffs themselves up a little bit. As an example, you may be an interviewer on a podcast and a TV show, but are you the world's best interviewer? Now on that one, okay, that we all get it. All right, that's I think anyone, including you, would say, well, there's, I don't know, maybe some of these, broadcasters are slightly better than me or more experienced, right? But we get it, right? It's kind of in jest. A pet peeve is where someone says it and it's not in jest. right? Like they actually really believe it and they want you to believe it, but everybody knows it's not true.
So in my case, you understand that I know that I might not be right, but and I'm joking it, right? But I might be. One day I
It's
will
possible.
be. What's your favorite day of the week?
Monday. I love coming to work.
Mine too. What's something on your bucket list?
I want to go to Europe. I haven't been to Europe since I was in first grade. My parents dragged me over there, and I haven't been back. So I want to go to Europe.
College. You have 2 daughters.
I do.
They are what, in high school? Almost in high school?
Yep. Freshman and junior, 14 and 16, 2 girls.
You expect them to go to college. What's the thought on that? Where do you see kind of college or the state of education in the next decade?
I think college. I think college is something that is required. I think. Well, I say it. Think as a father that I think it's required. I think you always want to give your kids the best opportunity that you can, and so I certainly there's nothing negative about college. I don't think it sets you up for working hard, for getting into this model where if you put in the effort, then you get the reward. And that's a meaningful lesson to learn. Certainly an expensive and long lesson to learn, but at that age, it's a good lesson to learn, and it's very vivid, and it kind of sets you up. It opens up doors. So I think college is a good thing. Now, if you have some other opportunity, like you're getting ready to launch Facebook in your dorm room, and you don't need no stinking Harvard anymore, fine, drop out, all right? Because you're going to be a super billionaire. But for most of us, that's not really the case. So yeah, I think college is a good thing, and we're preparing for it.
Very cool. How do you deal with distractions?
I try to eliminate them. So this thing right here can be a huge distraction for people. So I turn off a lot of notifications. I don't get notified for things like email. I don't get notified for things like Slack messages on this. I get notified for phone calls and for appointments because I need to know about appointments, where I need to be and when, and text messages. And that's about it. Everything else I turn off. I have a Mac. My Mac is not integrated in with social media. So you can bring your social media accounts into your Mac and probably Windows, although I haven't been on Windows in years, but you can bring it into your operating system so that when you get a tweet or a Facebook like or a this, that, or the other, you get dinged, right? It comes up right there, ding. I don't want that, right? So when I'm here, I want to be focusing on this particular spreadsheet or this document or whatever I need to be focusing on. I want to focus on it to completion. So basically, how do I deal with it? Eliminate. Turn off the notifications. Just get rid of it. You do not need it.
Yep, I'm very much the same. I will get a text message, but it does not vibrate. It will just pop up on my phone. Calendar invite, and the only thing that will go through is an actual phone call. Everything else, no social to the phone, no email, because you know what? I don't need to check those things all the time. I know people all the time are like, hey, I messaged you on Facebook during the day. And my response is, okay. Like, I'll get to it when I get to it. Nothing is that important. And I think most people need to really get that.
How do you know what else is,
yeah,
real quick, another thing that's very distractible is news and weather. So like when I leave the office, I'll go work out. I go to the gym. And the people that I talk to, they know exactly what's happened in the news throughout the course of the day. And they're always surprised that I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, unless there's this huge bombing that took place down the street, I don't know about it. Why? Because I'm focused on what I need to do.
Sure.
Those things that happen in the external world, they can wait. They can just wait.
And honestly, they probably don't matter.
Right. They're out of my sphere of influence. I can't do anything about it. The only thing I can really do is know about it and then gossip about it, and I'm just not interested.
How do you say no?
I pretty clearly say no. So one of the things that I've learned over the years is it's much better for everyone if instead of tiptoeing around something and telling a salesman to call back in a week, or maybe you're kind of interested or something like that, just say no. Just say no. Just say, no, I'm not interested, and tell them why. All right? Be honest. Your product is too expensive, or what you're offering is not what I need. It sounds great. I wish you the best of luck, but it's not for me. And you have to make it real clear. This is a no-go.
Mine's something like, I appreciate your hustle. However, this is not going to work for me. Actually, I recently have said yes to a couple of things. Because I think you might remember this, but like in 2013, my New Year's resolution, those stupid things, was to learn how to say no. And I did really, really well for a long time. And then in the last few months, I've been saying yes to a lot of things. And I recently said yes to something that was like 6 hours long. It was a commitment. And I didn't want to do it. And I don't know if you've heard the quote by Derek Sivers from CD Baby, but he basically says, you either need to say, F yes, I want to do this, or just tell them no. And I kind of feel, because if you go to something and you don't want to be there, you're not giving that good attention. The person there is wasting their time. It ends up being a waste. And it's not fun. Who's your ideal client?
Ideal client is a company that brings in at least $5 million a year in revenue and probably upwards of about $50 million a year. That's our sweet spot. And it's in something that is considered for us relatively boring business, right? So no, it's not like we're not making music videos here. We're not making movies. We are building business applications. So we're looking for a company that is in, frankly, just kind of a boring business, but they need to automate. They need to make their systems more efficient. That's an ideal candidate or prospect for us.
And they're looking for what for you to solve?
They're looking for us to help their business grow. So what we find a lot of times is that clients come to us when their existing software or their manual processes hold them back from growing, right? So they need to do something. A particular client, they import price lists from lots of different manufacturers, and they do that manually, right? So they were taking all these Excel spreadsheets and looking at each row one at a time and then going into their inventory list and updating it. It took days to do this. And they have something like 50 or 60 of them. Well, it's all in a database. Once they enter it into their system, it's in a database. That database has an API. So what we did is we said, you guys are spending way too much time doing this, and you're making mistakes because you're human, right? You make mistakes. You get in a rush or whatever. You're just going to screw it up. So what we did is we gave them the ability to just take that file. We analyze the format. They upload the file into our logic. We parse out the data. So we extract a little piece of the data and we put it where it needs to go in the database, and it's done. So what used to take them literally like 3 days to do one file, it takes about 3 seconds now.
Well, that's a big difference.
It's a little bit of a difference, and it's always done right because it's a program, right? You need to figure out what the program needs to do. So that's an example of a company that it was a company, they were doing well, but they were spending so much time and money and energy with this broken process that we could automate it and improve it. Another kind of company for us is one that, again, is kind of in a boring business usually, but they're a service-based business and they want their own software as a service product. Right? They want to start something new based on their experience doing this boring business. So we have a client in Virginia Beach. It's the boring part of their business is they inspect power lines, right? So they're looking at power lines. Now, the interesting part of their business, look, there's a power line and the bolt is rusty, and they make a note of it and they give it to their client. That's boring. The cool part is they do it with drones, right? So they were experts in flying drones, and they would hire military aviators to fly these drones. These are professional pilots. So that's the cool part, but they wanted their own product. Right? So they were going into these big companies, like power companies, and they wanted to be able to sell something to them, something that was relevant to their industry. And so we built a product from nothing, but based on their experience, and now they are reselling that.
Very cool. When does a business put the pedal to the metal?
When? I mean, usually, always.
You
right?
think?
Now, the question is, can you really get it down to the metal, or do you have to kind of like back off a little bit? Certainly, when you're a one-person enterprise, one person, you can only do so much, right? You can only do so much, but you're giving it your all, right? So you're always giving it your all. Now, when you're small, you have to pick whether you're going to focus on operations or business development, but you're giving it everything you've got, right? If you're not giving it everything you've got, then who is?
Is that
Well, you're not. Your competitors are.
Is that one person enterprise your pet peeve?
Yeah, kind of, right? Yeah.
When did you finally decide to shave your head?
I decided to shave my head probably about 10 years ago. See, I would look at myself straight on, right? And I would see hair. And so it looked good this way, although I had a lot of skin going back here. And then I'd do this, and I'd see a lot of skin. And I thought, you know what? It's time. The moment that you look at the top of your head and all you see is skin and you're concerned about it, that's the time to shave.
There you go. Erik Olson.
Hey, by the way, I mentor guys in that situation. So when I see someone in that situation, if I know them well enough, I'll let them know, hey, man, it's time.
What do they say to that?
They usually say, I know.
But they're too afraid to do it.
Tell them what I'm talking about. I just say, hey, man, it's time.
Ladies and gentlemen, Erik Olson. You guys can learn more about them at thisisarray.com. It's episode 69 of the 1004 show. And if you're looking for a mentor to figure out when to shave the head, Erik's your guy. You guys can check him out. Erik Olson, appreciate your time, your wisdom, and excited to see where you guys go now that the merge is beyond and you guys got your process down. You guys can just fly on by.
Right on. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of the 1004 show. I want to tell you guys about something that we just released that we're super passionate about. It's called Inbox. It's a series of scenarios that business owners have inevitably had to go through. And what do they do when they go through these? Stuff like, what happens when you get a bad review on social media? Or more deadly, what do you do when a customer tells you that they can't pay you for the work that you've done? Check it out in the show notes or at startwithhatch.com/inbox.